Oh, we have got a fun one on tap for DTNsights today. Thanks for joining. I am Renny Vandewege, General Manager of Weather and Climate Intelligence for DTN. And man, do I have the best guest ever to join me today, Mr. Mike Wolfinbarger of DTN, the founder, creator of RadarScope. As we were talking about what your title is, it is all things RadarScope is probably the best way we can describe it. But technically a product manager, an engineering manager, but with sights on RadarScope for DTN. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks, Renny, for inviting me to come on board.
Awesome. Well, I would love to start off a little bit with your background, and we'll get to RadarScope, but you have had an interesting career even leading up to this app. And for those that aren't aware of RadarScope, we'll get into more of the details of that, but it is an app that is very near and dear to weather nerds around the world and has grown beyond that. But Mike, how did you kind of start off in your career? What did you intend to do with your career? How did it lead to you being here at DTN?
So I grew up in the 80s when personal computers were really starting to become a thing, and we were figuring out what we could do with them and how they would be useful. Mid to late 80s, the idea of graphical interfaces and more sophisticated, easier to use computers came along. I really got on board with the Apple Macintosh platform at an early stage, back when nobody knew what it was. And seeing the difference between that way of people using and interacting with computers and the way we had done it, for 20 years before that was a real revolution. And so my career, I wanted to be built around build intuitive user interfaces for interacting with information. And that overlapped a little bit with an interest in education. My first job in college was working for an Apple computer reseller that sold set up computers in schools around Oklahoma. And so there's an educational overlap there and interest. A couple of people came into the store one day to buy some computers for teachers. They were at the University of Oklahoma. They were building something called the Oklahoma Mesonet. It was going to be one of the first fully automated environmental monitoring networks of its kind. And part of that program was to buy computers, buy internet access, and give teachers the tools to teach students in the classroom in K-12 about the weather. While they were there, they said, "Hey, we're going to buy all these computers. We need somebody that can write some software for them. Do you know anybody that does that?" And the guy that managed the store said, "Well, Mike's kind of interested in that. I think that's what he wants to do." One thing led to another. I ended up being a student employee while I was still a student at OU for a year. Helped write some of the first software to display Mesonet data, weather data, and they used it in classrooms. Ended up becoming a full-time employee, worked at the university for 18 years. We took that program and grew it. We, in addition to surface things like air temperature and wind speed and rainfall, radar data is a big thing. The next-gen radar network was deployed in the late 80s, early 90s. But when that started, you had to buy radar data. So the radars were deployed for the weather service offices to use to see the data. And at that point, getting megabytes and megabytes of data flowing like a fire hose out to the general public just wasn't feasible. But by the mid 90s, it was, because we had the internet, bandwidths were increasing. It was easier to get data to people. So, but you still had to buy it. And so what we did was a project called OK First, which bought radar data from the vendors that resold that data, and again built software and built websites, bought computers for emergency managers at the county and the local city level in Oklahoma. We brought them to Norman. We did week-long workshops to teach them how to use the software and how to use the data. And so that was a real revolution for us in Oklahoma, because the emergency managers that are out, at the local level are looking at the same data. They're looking at the same information that the forecasters are looking at in the Weather Service office. So it really improved that situational awareness. It improved their ability to make decisions and work in what's a very important partnership between the federal and local level to get information out to people and keep people safe.
So that, I know, sort of led to, as you had started to work on the software, was kind of led to the idea of RadarScope. So when you had kind of the initial vision for RadarScope, what did you have in mind?
So the work we did here in the 90s took that radar data, we got it out of the Weather Service office and into the hands of first responders and local decision makers. So now we've gotten it into the Emergency Operations Center at, say, the county level or the city level. But there's storm spotters out there in the field that are sitting in cars and trucks and actually watching the weather and then radioing back to those EOCs saying, this is what I'm seeing. This is what's going on. Those guys don't have a PC in their car. Or they didn't then. They didn't have good solutions for actually seeing the data. There's a lot of conversations just happening over voice. The iPhone comes along in 2008, well, 2007, and it's really the first example of taking everything that's in a personal computer, including the APIs and the SDKs we need to write real software for it, and make it available to the general public. So for what seemed expensive at the time, you know, $700, $800, $1,000, you can put a supercomputer in your pocket. Now we've got the ability through better cell phone networks and better smartphone platforms to take the same software we wrote for emergency managers and PCs and put it on smartphones. And that was something we talked about doing for a long time, but just waiting for the right opportunity to come along in the right form. The iPhone did it in 2008, and Android did it around the same time. And so our goal really was to build a product that we wanted to use working in the weather space to look at this data, but also a product that meteorologists and emergency managers and storm spotters and first responders, all those people can do to keep it in their pocket. You know, if you look at emergency management at the local level in Oklahoma and small towns, a lot of those folks are volunteers, or a lot of them are part-time employees. So they're not always sitting at the EOC and the police station, the fire department, whatever, looking at this. They've got a day job. Putting RadarScope, putting NextRad data in their pocket allows them to keep up with things that's going on, to see what's going on and say, hey, I need to get over there. I need to be in the office now. I need to be on duty. So doing that, and also giving those people that are out in the spotter vehicles an opportunity to see the same thing the EOC is seeing, the same thing that the meteorologists at the Weather Service office are seeing, was a huge thing. And that's really what we set out to do.
And then it blew up. The sort of initial desires for what you thought it could be, you found out you had a much bigger market out there interested in this data. What surprised you about that initial launch and just how sort of the beginning of this popularity began?
Yeah, I think, you know, in hindsight, maybe it's not surprising, but it sure was to us at the time. So we're the team of folks that I worked with at the University of Oklahoma for the Oklahoma had built the software for PCs. We knew we could adapt it for the iPhone. We got access to that SDK in March before the App Store went live in July. By May, we had a quasi-functional prototype. By August, we were ready to launch. Well, we knew the university wasn't going to sell it. We knew the university could use it to serve Oklahomans and serve people in an official capacity in Oklahoma. But we thought there was a wider market for this. We thought the whole country needed to be able to have access to this. So we talked with the intellectual property folks at OU, and they said, well, you can license it to a company or you can start a company. Those are the two ways there. We felt like this was something we wanted to nurture and help grow and have some control over. So we started a little side business. The intellectual property officer at OU asked me, he said, if I'm going to do this license for you, how many of these do you think you're going to sell? And I thought for a second, and I said, oh, we'll sell a few thousand copies to meteorologists and local emergency managers. Well, the thing I wasn't thinking about when I said that is that the weather community is tight knit. The weather community is a partnership that runs from the federal level down to the state and local level into the private sector where you and I work now. The broadcast sector, we've got meteorologists on TV helping keep people informed and safe. And all of those people love what they do. They're passionate and excited about what they do. And the chance to take NextRad data and put it on a device that your family owns, that mom has, that your kids have, that your aunts and uncles have, and that all your constituents have, whether you're a TV meteorologist and they're turning on the TV to view you, or you're an emergency manager in a small town that's, you know, helping keep a few thousand people safe. it's a chance to share what you do every day and share your expertise with people on a consumer grade platform that everybody has access to. And so somebody asked me once, how did you market this thing and launch it? What was your initial, rollout like? I said, well, I sent an email to about 30 friends in the weather community. That's literally what I did. We didn't buy ads. We didn't do anything like that. Those people did the rest. We've had people work in marketing at the companies I've worked at that refer to that core base of users that we built this app for is the RadarScope Army. They're the people that love this product, and they go tell their constituents about it because they're excited about it and they know it's a way to help them stay safe.
Yeah, I tell this story a lot. When I was a graduate student at Mississippi State, I went into our climate lab, and this is the first time I got my hands on NEXRAD data, and it was a software that was used for TV. And I think that software was, for better or worse, about $100,000 a year to procure the data, use the hardware. And next thing you know, you've got this app on a cell phone that we all had anyways, right? A new smartphone. And I could look at that same data literally in the palm of my hand. It is mind blowing the leap forward that took. And so for every weather nerd geek, and we say that with love and passion, they had access all of a sudden. And that was a huge launch. How have you seen the impact of RadarScope on the weather industry and in all the ways that it's touched that maybe you had never dreamt were even possible?
It's touched it at a lot of levels. I mentioned that the weather industry is a public-private partnership that works very well to keep Americans informed and safe. Folks that work for the National Weather Service and NOAA have RadarScope on a phone in their pocket. When a weather service office sends people out in the field to do storm damage surveys, they often have RadarScope on a phone, and they're looking at the data from the storm that happened a week ago to see where the storm went so they can compare that to the actual damage in the field. They use it when they're off duty and not working a shift to see what's going on with the weather, maybe give them an idea if they're going to need extra staffing or whatever. But then TV meteorologists use it to keep people informed. There's a really big tornado outbreak that happened in 2011, and one of the most popular TV meteorologists on the air in that market, they had some technical issues with the television station radar. He pulled out a Mac, plugged it in, and started informing people using RadarScope. So seeing people use it on TV, seeing people post to social media that have constituents that want to know about the weather, post RadarScope screenshots, seeing storm spotters use it, seeing students and researchers use it, and then seeing their constituents, people that are just in the general public. If you live in a state like Oklahoma or Nebraska, like you and me, weather is a really big part of what we do. I joke that weather in California is do I need a jacket or not? And weather in Oklahoma is my house going to be here when I get home. And I'm not joking. We think that 2 or 3 times a year. So just being able to get that data into the hands of everybody that wants to see it. We're providing that last mile of support. We're providing what we hope is a good user interface and user experience to access it efficiently and use it to make decisions. So the impact has been across every level of the infrastructure and the institutions we have in place to get weather information out to people.
Yeah, it hit me really hard when I was interacting with Dr. Chuck Doswell, rest in peace. He just passed recently, a legend in the world of meteorology research and education. Many of us meteorologists look up to him, and he was influential on us. I was having a conversation with him one time, and he said, Renny, I bought a $700 iPhone. He was like, I had a flip phone. I bought a $700 iPhone just so I could have RadarScope on it. And I was like, okay, that's as an endorsement as I could ever hear for a product. So for those that aren't familiar, Mike, where's all the places you can actually use RadarScope? It started with the iPhone. You mentioned Android, but it's expanded into quite the ecosystem of ways to get RadarScope.
Yeah, we launched on the iPhone in 2008. We brought the product to Android in 2011. Apple ecosystem is a really robust one in terms of developing something on one of their platforms and extending it everywhere else. So we've been able to expand across their line to Mac OS, to Apple TV, to the Apple Watch. We can do interactive native radar data on an Apple Watch. You turn the little digital crown to zoom in and out. So screen sizes, I'd say screen sizes from 1 inch to 100 inches. We're on it. We expanded to Windows a few years ago. So Windows, Android, Android Wear, Apple Watch, Apple TV, iPhone, iPad, Mac. We're on all of those. And we're on all of those with an approach that a lot of people don't put the time and effort into. We're on all of those with a native app that's optimized to do what it does very well, and not, add layers of stuff that might slow it down or make it less efficient.
Yeah. And the features inside of that app have changed so much over time. What started as just NexRad radar, there you can get a whole boatload of different weather information on. Anything you'd be willing to share on sort of what's next on the roadmap for RadarScope as you think about the future?
Well, we've spent the last couple of years trying to look and think beyond just radar data. We're certainly looking to make our radar data, the way we present radar data better. If you look over the last 15 years, radar data was 1 kilometer and 16 colors for reflectivity image, and now it's 1/4 kilometer and 256 data levels. So just the radar data has gotten a lot better. The last couple of years, we've focused on trying to go beyond that to add things like ghost satellite data, atmospheric soundings, real-time mesoscale analysis, the efforts that NSSL put in a multi-radar, multi-sensor product suite where you can see multiple radars stitched together, track things like azimuthal shear, which gives you an idea of a tornado path, and then all the supplemental products around that. So we spent the last couple of years working really hard to take this product and keep the core working really well, which is single site radar data, fast and efficient when you need it, but also expand to do these other things meteorologists do. Our next release that's coming up here in March, I believe, we're adding surface data for meteor stations. We're expanding the Apple Watch app to add some of the subscription level features. So in addition to native radar data, you can get native GOES data and RTA data and all of those things too. So we're just, continuing the effort to keep making the product better, add more value to the people that use it.
One of the pieces of feedback I get, and it's always positive, but it originally started for people that were really, really in tune to weather, people in the weather industry, emergency managers, professors, TV meteorologists, but the popularity and the use of it has grown out into more weather enthusiasts and people looking for great radar data, which is awesome. What kind of tips do you have for people that may not have an advanced degree in weather or understand what velocity is, or some of the, deeper layer, not just where is it raining, but some of those other really unique features from radar on how to get the most out of the app to really tap into the true horsepower behind this powerful app?
Well, I think some of the things that maybe the average user doesn't know, get into it, just not in terms of interpreting data, but just using the app, is that out of the box, we give you more than one place to get data from. So, we run a pretty tight ship and a pretty stable and efficient set of servers that scale up and down to meet demand, and they almost always work. But if you ever get in a situation where something isn't working right, you can switch over to another set from that are government run servers and use off of them. So one of the things we try to do out of the box is give you the ability to always get data. If this doesn't work, then this method does. And then we have subscription level plans that add even more providers to there. So if you fill everything up and you do everything, you got 4 different places you can get radar data from your app. You've got multiple places you can get warning feeds from and things like that. So one of the things I usually tell people to do is experiment, play around in the app, just familiarize yourself with it. The nice thing about a well-written smartphone app is you can't break it, you can't screw it up. Poke around in the app and find things. We design the interface so that the thing people do the 10% of the features you use 90% of the time always are quick, easy to find, but there's things buried 1 or 2 clicks down that are just, open up a whole wealth of stuff. So as far as usage, I would say that. As far as learning about this data, one of the just exciting things to me is how many people want to learn more about it. I've had people say that using this app makes me feel smart. I say that most apps on your phone are designed to turn your brain off and keep your attention span and get you to look at things and maybe spend more time that you don't need to spend. RadarScope is designed to turn your brain on. It's designed to engage and activate your intelligence and help you, inspire you to want to learn things.
You're saying it's
the
not
core
TikTok.
audience you mentioned is excited about this stuff, and they can use this as a conduit to teach their constituencies, whether they're TV viewers or people in their hometown or whatever. There's a lot of online materials. You can learn more about how to interpret radar and satellite data. NOAA, the National Weather Service, has some great ones. We've got a little bit of stuff inside the app. One of the things we're doing, and we're doing it tomorrow, is we're a title sponsor for a spring training event sponsored by a group called Girls Who Chase. They're a nonprofit organization, is promoting not just women in STEM fields and in meteorology in particular, but promoting knowledge and education for how people can learn more about interpreting this data. They've got a professor from Purdue that's going to teach an intermediate radar interpretation workshop tomorrow. They've got scientists from Comet in Colorado that's going to teach about satellite interpretation. It's a great way to get online. You can join it live tomorrow, or you can come in and watch it afterwards if you really want to dig in and learn more about this stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. We're really proud of that sponsorship too. It's a great organization. Well, Mike, we're going to wrap this up with our final segment we call Heat Burst. Just a couple quick questions to kind of fun questions here. I'm curious, have you heard of any users of RadarScope that like really surprised you? Somebody famous, somebody, it's gotten in a lot of hands. Is there any stories where you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that person used this?
I'm always interested to see where it pops up. Sometimes to me, the biggest surprises are I'm standing in line at a restaurant and somebody in front of me is holding their phone and looking at the weather, and it's RadarScope. Those are some of the ones that surprise me the most. I had a meeting with some of the folks in marketing yesterday, and they said, well, what's the demographic of people that use RadarScope? What age group, whatever. They range from 8 to 80. There's kids that are enthusiastic about science and the weather and want to pursue a career in it, and they're super excited about this. We were at the National Storm Chaser Summit in Overland Park, Kansas last week, and there were a lot of middle school and high school kids coming up and just getting excited about severe weather in the app. And this, kid telling me, hey, I looked at this and I said, this is going to be warned and this is going to be this, and Dad doesn't believe me. And then it is. And he comes back later and says, well, I should have listened to you. So one of the cool things is that we're inspiring young kids to pursue careers in this and to learn more about it. But, it's always amazing to me when people in the weather community, whether it's James Spann in Alabama or Jim Cantori on the Weather Channel, are using the product and advocating the product, even though we didn't ask them to do so. That's always exciting to me.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I think it was Mike Trout, the all-star baseball player in a weather nut. Saw a tweet with him put out.
I do remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, and it'll show up. We've been involved in some like movies and TV shows, and it's really cool. Or you'll get somebody that retweets out a picture of RadarScope saying, "Oh, that doesn't look good," and you're like, "My gosh, this thing is infiltrated in so many, even popular culture," which I find so fascinating.
It is. We get 1 or 2 requests to do a documentary or a movie or whatever every year. Say, hey, can we include screenshots from your app or whatever? Several years ago, when the iPad was first coming along and popular, we got a few frames in an Apple commercial. So, one of the things I wanted to promote is how storm chasers or storm spotters can use this in the field. So it's just cool to it pops up. It's really neat to build something that you thought was going to be small and niche, and that finds a wider audience. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And Mike, you're too humble to share, but I've seen you be a rock star at conferences too. You know, it's like you probably signed some autographs over time, which is so
oddly
awesome.
enough we have, which always seems a little strange to me, but you know, I'm the face of and the voice of a dedicated group of people that, you know, it's a core development team, 6 guys that have worked together anywhere from 15 to 30 years in this business, in this field, trying to keep people safe and informed and excited about what we do. We're backed up by DTN, which is a company with a worldwide footprint that as the product has scaled up and become more than just, you know, us with a lemonade stand hanging up, it gives us the ability to serve hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of gigabytes of data instead of, you know, 100 people that handle support for us so I can get some sleep or whatever. And it's the last mile of getting data and a great user experience out to people for an infrastructure that we've invested in the US over the last 150 years and building a strong NOAA and National Weather Service. So RadarScope is this little tip of the iceberg that sticks above the waterline, and you say, well, this is really cool, and look, you did that, but I'm the guy that represents it and tries to get people excited about it and explains to people, hey, we've got something really valuable and really precious here, and here's why you should be excited about it. So
your
it's
team,
fun that I get to do that.
yeah, and your team is awesome and really, really smart, and they've done incredible work. I'm curious, the most unique weather event to impact you personally.
Oh goodness. I live right here in Oklahoma. May 3rd, 1999, we had built that OK First system that I talked about in the mid 90s, 96, 97. We had rolled that out to emergency managers. Dr. Renee McPherson comes into my office one day. I work for her at the president. She says, hey, it looks like a good Cato storm chasing. Have you ever been? I said, no. She said, do you want to go? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I watched the
that day.
half-mile tornado
Yeah.
that hit Moore on May 3rd, 99. I watched that storm cross Interstate 44 on its way into the metro area. We chose not to follow it because it was a beast, and we looked at it and we said, we need to stay out of the way. Seeing that in person, seeing the magnitude of that and knowing what was coming has a pretty big impact to tell you that what you're doing is important. But there were a ton of stories that came out of that day that were success stories for us that helped us feel like we were doing something good because we had gotten radar into the hands of emergency managers across the state. There were a lot of success stories that came out of it. One of my favorites, that there's a caravan of emergency vehicles coming down the turnpike from Tulsa to Oklahoma City to respond to this monster of a storm that just went through a metropolitan area. But there are, 100 other tornadoes that happened that night. I don't remember the number, a huge number that happened that same evening. There's one of the people we trained is listening to the radio, and they hear this caravan's coming through Stroud, and they're looking at the radar, and they get on the radio and they say, hey guys, you need to stop what you're doing and block the road right now. And I said, why? It's because there's a tornado about to blow right across your path. So that caravan of vehicles stopped, blocked traffic on the interstate. That tornado took out an outlet mall in Stroud, which was closed, and so limited impact on lives, thank goodness. But they were able to keep people from driving into that. And they were also able to make sure that those first responders, that those rescuers could be part of the solution and didn't become part of a problem because they didn't know what was coming their way. So when you look at those kind of impacts, those are the things that make a huge difference to me. I live in by severe weather. I've got a 30-year roof on my house. It's my fourth one in 15 years. So we get a lot of hail. We get a lot of things. My wife's graduation from grad school at the university, we were about to head over to it, and a storm hit here and hit the house and knocked out the baseball size hail, knocked out 9 windows in the front of the house, destroyed my mother-in-law's car. We experience severe weather all the time, and there's a lot of it that impacts us. So we're just happy that we can have a product and contribute to a field that's trying to help keep people informed and educated so they can make good decisions.
Absolutely. May 3rd was an impact on the entire weather enterprise. It was the driver of so many major research projects. It's the logo, right, of RadarScope. Is that
It
correct?
is. The storm on the RadarScope logo is the hook echo from May 3rd is coming into more. That, not just that storm, but that outbreak, that whole series of events is what galvanized the weather community in Oklahoma and the political movement to get the National Weather Center built in Norman, Oklahoma, which was a building I was fortunate enough to help plan the IT infrastructure for and move into and work in for 6 years. That's, you can't really overstate the impact that had in terms of motivating people. We need to invest in this. We need to help. We may not be able to protect you. We can't keep it from happening, but we can educate and inform you and help make better decisions to stay safe.
Absolutely. All right, final one here. If you could build an app with no weather involved in it whatsoever, what's the dream app that you've thought about you wanted to build? Don't give away anything you might want to build, but curious if you thought like, boy, this would be a cool app to make.
This is going to sound like a cop out and corny, but I'm doing it.
There you go. No, it's not a cop out. I love that.
When Steve Jobs held the iPhone up in January 2007 and said, this thing runs macOS 10. I was watching the keynote, turned and looked at each other and said, we've already got software that'll run on that. We can adapt that. They just need to give us the ability to write third-party apps. And a year later, they did. And the reason we're still doing this is the app I wanted on my phone. It's probably still the one I use the most. I made 3 or 4 third-party apps, including ours, that I use every day. I'm still building the app. I'm still working with the guy building the app we wanted to build. This is what we wanted to put on a smartphone, and we get to do it every day.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough for this work, your team's work. It's made a massive difference in my own life. It's an important part of DTN, but I mean, even keeping my own family safe. I have it running all day long, and if we got storms coming, we're looking at it and timing it out and using the tools that you built into it to figure out, okay, I think it'll be here in 40 minutes. Let's get inside, be safe. It's a remarkable app, and you and your team have done wonderful things with it. And I thank you for your time on DTNsights. It's been a really fun conversation, and we're thankful that you're a part of DTN.
Well, our team is thankful to be here. DTN's been, I guess we've been part of DTN for about 6.5 years now.
Yep.
It's been a great home for us. It's allowed us to take this product farther, reach more people, and do it with a stable, robust infrastructure, good support behind it. So we're happy to be here, and just thrilled that you guys are finding it so valuable.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Mike, and thanks to everyone for watching this episode of DTNsights.
Thanks, Renny.